Alright, for tonight's video, I thought we can go over some of the photos that I took with this amazing couple, Krishna and Revathi, and show you some techniques, just some simple editing techniques that can turn your photo from a good photo to a great photo. Okay, so got 3 photos here that we will be editing. Let's get started with the first one. So we can see here, it's shot on a camera, but these editing skills can be translated into any photo as long as you have an editing software such as Adobe Lightroom. Adobe Lightroom on PC is paid, but if you get the mobile app, that is free. So you can apply these techniques to any photo you like. Let me adjust the exposure a bit just to brighten it up because I want it to look like a nice airy photo. And contrast is great already. But what I'll do is I'll turn down the highlights just to bring a little bit of detail back in the bright parts of the sky. So that's no detail. Let's bring back all the detail. And with the shadows, I might bring it up just a little because if I go over, it's going to look like the light is shot flat on them. So I might just bring it up a little bit. Make sure that the blacks are still black. I'm going to brighten up the whites there a teeny bit more. And then here I'm going to adjust it so that I can get a nice contrasty image. So just about there. So adjusting just simply the highlights, shadows, whites and blacks already turns it from this to this. Let's see, before, after. Just adding a bit more contrast in the image. Okay, so now what I'll do, so let me check, its photo's nice and sharp, it's amazing. But what I'll do, just to make it more dreamlike, I'll turn down the clarity a bit so you can see the background's kind of getting mushed together, drawing more focus onto our subject. And at the same time, I'll turn the texture up just a little bit so that the image is still sharp. Vibrance and saturation, I'll keep it like that for now because I'm pretty happy with what it is. So that's a bit too vibrant for me, so I might just keep it as is. So tone curve is quite an advanced tool to adjust the contrast, but a nice simple S-curve would really elevate the photo. So it gives you a lot of fine control over the image because it is using a curve instead of just a generic slider to edit the image. So basically remember, the bottom part is the shadows, the top part is the highlights, and I just added slight adjustment there. You don't need to go overboard. I know when I first started editing, I would make like a giant S-curve and the image would look really crappy because I thought, hey, if I adjust it and it makes it better, why not do more of it? But here in editing, if you do more of it, it's just gonna kill the image. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Let's have a look at before. It was a pretty flat image, and now it's a nice, bright, airy image, just because there's a lot more contrast with the highlights and the shadows and the whites and blacks. Let's move on to our next image. We'll apply the same sort of adjustments for the whole image. So first off, I'll change the brightness a little bit, change the exposure, I mean. I'm going to leave the contrast as is. The way I'm adjusting the contrast in the image with the highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks is more refined, and it adjusts less of the image overall, whereas contrast just immediately creates more contrast throughout the whole image. So that's contrast plus 49 there. So let's say, okay, that is our look there. But if I go into our highlights, bring it back down again, adjust the shadow a little bit, not too much, maybe about there, increase the whites, and finally turn the blacks down a little bit. So see, look at the difference between this and before. So after, before, after, before, after. So let me save this as a screenshot so that we can see the differences. So let me reset the highlights, shadows, whites and blacks, and I'll just increase the contrast. So compare this image, whereas you can see a lot more detail in the trees, right, rather than just cranking the contrast slider. By adjusting the highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks, it brings a lot more detail to the image, and it's a lot more refined. The edits are a lot more refined. Okay, so alright, I'm going to go back to the highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks adjustment. It is looking a little bit dark there, so I'm going to brighten it up. Ooh, too much, sorry. Brighten it up just a bit, not too much. Maybe about plus 0.6, nice even number. And have a look at before and after. Before, after. Beautiful. Onto our last image. Again, it's shot a little bit underexposed for reasons I will discuss another time. But let's just bring it back up to a good exposure. Right? And I'm not going to touch the contrast slider. Just going to adjust the highlights, bring back all the shadows. Bring back all the details in the bright parts of the image. So look at that. Highlights, no, all bright. Turn down the highlights, you get some details back in the shadow. Okay? Back in the bright parts, Okay, but just the shadows a little bit. See, if I increase the shadows by a lot, right, I need to balance it out with turning the blacks down. It's right about there. And then, because I turned down the highlights so much, I might increase more of the whites. And that looks pretty good there. So have a look at the before and after. Before, after. Obviously the brightness edit is quite apparent, but in terms of the detail and the contrast in the image, it is a big difference. So let's have a look at all three of our images for today. First one, second one, third one. So that's all for today. A nice quick little editing tutorial. Again, I want to reiterate, these skills can be translated into any editing software on any platform, as long as you have the software and the photo to edit. Small adjustments make a big difference to the photo, and that's what makes a photo go from good to great. So, hope you enjoy. Catch you next time.